want to thank everyone for coming out today. Very grateful that you took the time out to come out to enjoy our session. And we're also really grateful that LSU's off today. Otherwise, we might be speaking to tumbleweeds in here, so that's always a good thing. We're very excited that you get a chance to hear Steve talk about his book project. It's something I know he's very proud of, something that we worked on for about 2.5 years. Anyway, we're excited that you're here with us. I want to introduce our panel real quick. That you're going to be hearing from today. Down to my far left is Chad Luibl. Chad is a literary agent with Janklow and Nesbitt, and he was a big part of our team on this project. And we're very happy that he just happened to be coming down for this book festival and able to join our session today. And then to my immediate left, of course, is Michel Gleason, the force behind our project, Steve's amazing wife and a good dear friend of mine. And then I would like to introduce the person you came to see today and give you a little background in case you don't already know enough about this great guy, Steve Gleason. Let me give you some background here. Steve played 8 years with the New Orleans Saints and he's a native, let me just start at the beginning. He's a native of Spokane, Washington, up in the Pacific Northwest, proud graduate of Gonzaga Prep. He was a two-sport athlete and star at Washington State University. I think still holds a number of records for the baseball program and was also an All-Pac-10 performer at linebacker on the last Washington State team to go to the Rose Bowl. It's a pretty big achievement. Steve was in the 2000 draft and was undrafted. A lot of people bypassed him, and they learned their lesson about that because he ended up signing, of course, with the New Orleans Saints in 2000 as a free agent and ended up being a part of really some of the best teams that the Saints have ever had. In 2006, he was a part of the team that won the first playoff game in franchise history, and of course we all remember the iconic block punt in the Superdome against the Atlanta Falcons in the first game after Katrina, the reopening of the dome. And Steve was a brilliant player back in his day, was a special teams captain a number of years, voted on by his teammates, was an All-Pro and Pro Bowl alternate in 2002, and really the best special teams player on the team throughout his career when he was with the New Orleans Saints. And after retiring in 2008, he married Michel on the bridge. What's the name of the bridge? Magnolia Bridge across Bayou St. John, and started his post-playing career and was diagnosed with ALS in January of 2011. And shortly after that, he founded Team Gleason Foundation that has been a leader in raising awareness of the disease, improving the lives of those affected by it. I think 30,000 people living with ALS have been treated or cared for through Team Gleason, and over how many millions? I know you told me not to ask about.
40 million?
$40 million raised. Incredible achievement from what started as a bunch of friends and family in basically a gas station in Mid-City. Steve, in 2020, you may have heard, was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, which is the highest civilian honor that our government bestows. He was the first football player ever to receive the honor. And then earlier this year, you might have seen on ESPN, Steve was awarded the Arthur Ashe Courage Award, which is the highest honor that ESPN gives out. So Steve's got a lot of honors, a lot of hardware, and well-deserved. And I think his two greatest achievements, other than marrying Michel, are his incredible kids, Rivers, and his daughter, Gray. With that, please welcome Steve Gleason. I think Steve is going to start off our session with a speech that he's put together about why he wrote A Life Impossible, why now, and why it was important to him to tackle this project. You may have seen he had a documentary. Steve and Michel had this incredible documentary years back, and there's been some time between that documentary and the book project. So a lot of life lessons, a lot of ebbs and flows along this journey that Steve started back in 2011. So I'll let him cue up the speech, and you can kind of get some insight into what went into this book.
Hi there, all of you wonderfully wonderful humans. I'm so grateful to be with y'all. How are you today? Okay, thank you for having me here. This festival is awesome, and I know that awesome ain't easy. So great effort to everyone who helped bring us together today. Okie dokie, let's get rolling. We're now 13 years into our journey with ALS, and while I'm not sure there's ever the perfect time to share our experience with the world, this time seemed good enough to carry out my intention in writing this book. This is my story, our story, of enduring drastic change, suffering heart-crushing loss, and ultimately finding a way to move through those circumstances, to discover strength, happiness, and peace of mind. This book is not a book about ALS. It's not a book about sports. And it's not a book about dying. This book is about living. I'm obviously a little biased, but I believe this story is a human story, and my intention in writing it was to share the connection that we all have. We all experience adversity, we all encounter heart-crushing loss, and we all experience suffering. I'm sure all of you have dealt with some version of suffering. As I said in my speech at the ESPYs, if you've never experienced suffering, you can roll your sanctified ass right out of here. It was my intention in writing this book to share my deepest pain and vulnerability, and also my weaknesses, imperfections, and outright failures, so that people who have been through similar situations can at the least know they have a friend with them on their journey. It's clear to me that sharing our shortcomings and vulnerabilities with each other is our greatest strength, our salvation. When you read the raw and searing experience that Michel and I have been through, you may feel kind of like you're overhearing conversations that you shouldn't be hearing. But these difficult, truthful, and compassionate conversations were our redemption and our healing. Even if your respective experience might not be as intense or dramatic, I wrote this to share my life, our life, for anyone who might benefit from it. This book is for anyone who has experienced pain, sorrow, or even trauma, or tragedy. This is a book about seeing adversity as the ultimate opportunity to grow stronger and better, than to discover the extraordinary within each of our own hearts, minds, and spirit. It was my intention in writing this to share what I have learned on this journey with others so that they, too, can live productive, meaningful lives, no matter what circumstances they may be in. I think that all of our ability to recognize the innate peace in the midst of chaos is possible. Strangely, it seems that most of the stories that humans are drawn to involve a great deal of pain and even suffering for the primary characters. And at least, in my case, in our story, there has been plenty of pain and suffering. I'm not sure that I've always sought to recognize peace in the midst of chaos, but I would say that I've always enjoyed pushing the edges and boundaries of what I think I can do on the physical and mental level. When everyone here reads the book, When everyone here reads the book, you will see that, in chapter 2, one of my favorite anecdotes is from when I was 6 years old. I have an experience where I push my body and mind well beyond their limits to discover what is on the other side of fear. And I call the discovery absolutely glorious. Enjoy reading that, everyone. It seems to me that for us to recognize innate peace in the midst of chaos, there is a step which is prior to the recognition. In chapter 1, you will read that I started calling the morning routine my workout to help me find ways to enjoy the process, just like I enjoy difficult workouts in the NFL. I then say, the difference between difficult and suffering is all in my mindset. What I am implying with these phrases is that we all have the ability to train our minds towards strength, freedom, and peace, no matter what circumstance we encounter. Also, in chapter 1, I say, I allow myself to get attached to the delusion that my life should somehow be different. While I'm just a beginner at this point, I'm slowly learning that we have been conditioned to attach to whatever interpretation of life we think we should be having. We get obsessed and mesmerized by our thoughts and feelings, and when that happens, we suffer. But when we can let thoughts and feelings pass, rather than get obsessed, it is possible to accept and embrace our circumstances. As Mary, the mother of Jesus, said, we can let it be done. As a former athlete, training my mind in this way, this is my NFL, my Super Bowl. I don't speculate on whether I would have discovered this training towards peace if I wasn't diagnosed with ALS, but this relentless disease has motivated me to level up. For me, this is the healing. This is the good news. This is the light that is within all of us. Enjoy reading the misadventures, the pain, and the failures, but also the strength, freedom, and peace, the good news in our book. Thank you for being here, everyone. I love you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, we're just going to start a little Q&A session, and I'm going to start first with Steve, of course. This book is a lot of things, but I think deep down it's really a love story above everything else. Steve and Michel's marriage has been tested in a lot of ways. I think there's a saying from author Tom Robin once wrote, there's only one serious question: who knows how to make love stay? So that question comes up a lot when you read A Life Impossible, as you see the trials and tribulations that the ALS diagnosis has placed upon not only Steve, but really everyone in his orbit. Steve often says, we were diagnosed in 2011, and I think that's so true. It's not just the person with the disease, it's everyone in the in his immediate orbit, and most of all, Michel. So my question, Steve, is what did you learn about your relationship along the way, and why was it so important for you to include that in this book? And Steve is using his eye tracking technology. We'll describe in detail how he uses this miraculous technology. It's really incredible, and it was a big
Michel and I are imperfect people, parenting two active kids, working to be a great team, and to find strength, solidarity, and love under extraordinary circumstances. We have always intended to share our story as real and raw and as transparent as possible. I think Michel has led on the front. We're not interested in some happily ever after school special. I believe the desire to live with freedom, peace, and, as Tom Robbins said, make love stay, despite the circumstances in one's life, is universal. So, if our story inspires anyone, in any situation, to see new possibilities for their life, then we've succeeded.
All right, to Chad. You got roped into this project a couple of years ago. I'm kind of curious, you've done a lot of book projects over your career. What was it that attracted you, and have you regretted joining this project?
Oh my gosh, no regrets, absolutely none. Well, first, I just want to say that this is incredibly special to be on Steve and Michel's home turf for this event. Most of the publishing events I've witnessed from New Jersey, and I've always wanted to be here in Louisiana to help celebrate this book. But your question was about how did I find this project?
And what attracted you to it?
Yeah. So I met Jeff first through another writer named Kent Babb, who wrote a book called Across the River. And I have a confession to make. I hope Steve doesn't kick me out. I come from a hockey family. Of course, I knew about the legendary Steve Gleason and the block punt and everything about his football career. But when you sent me those pages, Jeff, and the way a book is put together for nonfiction, just to fill you in, it's usually in a proposal, which means there's an introduction, there's a chapter outline, there's like a sample chapter or two. What really surprised me, really took my breath away, was this wasn't just an athlete who was, this was a poet, a guru, a teacher, and an incredible writer. The emotion on those pages shook me. I want to say the sample chapter was about Steve's trip to Machu Picchu in Peru, and about the daily routine. And so I was blown away by those pages, and came to find out really quickly that Steve's been a writer most of his life. Even before ALS, he was keeping journals and just constantly thinking and asking big questions. So the quality of the material right away, I knew it was something that I wanted to be a part of. And I've worked on well over 100 books. Hopefully I get to do another 100 in my career. I can say I am, without a doubt, this was the most extraordinary writing process I've ever experienced. And I just consider myself so lucky to have been a small part of it.
Well, that writing process, as all of us know, was quite challenging to some degree, and part of that challenge was the eye tracking technology that Steve uses. It's truly miraculous. Steve says often that without a cure for ALS, technology is that cure, and it's a huge part of Steve's life is how he communicates. It's how he lives his life every day. And so my question for Michel is maybe you can explain to people the eye tracking technology Steve uses, how it was used in the book process, and why it ended up being, as challenging as it was, it ended up turning into a blessing for us in gathering the information for the book.
Yep, so for those of you who don't know, so Steve types with his eyes, and if you can't really see from where you are, there's a bar at the bottom of his screen, and there's a keyboard that comes up, and his eyes dwell on a letter, and then it types the letter. And so he's basically typing letter by letter with a little bit of autocorrect, lots of erases for mistakes, but it is incredible. It's incredible he's able to use it. It's also very, very, very challenging. It's very slow. His eyes get very tired. So, typing this book letter by letter with your eyes was an enormous challenge for him and for all of us to make sure that he's getting his points across, he's getting everything in the book that he wants. It took forever. We had lots of nights of breakdowns, and he had to take lots of eye breaks and was concerned with the health of his eyes, all these things, but at the same time, because he's so, because of the technology, he was able to write the book, and the blessing of it is because Steve basically because for the past maybe 8 years he's been typing with his eyes, we have, the majority of our life recorded with words, whether it's via text, whether it's emails, whether it's GChat, whether it's now Wire. And so for us to write the book and for me to help, them source information, it's like not many of us have all of our conversations written down, so we could go find our conversations and basically copy paste and have the material right there because it's already written down for us, which helps the eye strength, which helps Jeff get the material, and then really for us that it also helps with the authenticity of the story. It's like not how I remembered it or how Steve remembered. It's like doesn't matter how I remembered it. It's right there. So it's blessing and challenge, but definitely more blessing for that stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of these projects with a lot of people like in Steve's shoes, or certainly someone facing the challenges Steve does on a daily basis, most people would give this to a ghostwriter, if you would, and let them write the book and just kind of come in and do their little touch up on it. That's, Steve, that's not how Steve is wired. He's not going to not be hands-on. He wrote this book, with the help of collaboration through Michel and I, but he was heavily involved. He was the driving force. As Chad said, he's an incredibly gifted writer. He's always been that way, all the way back when I first met Steve as a player for the New Orleans Saints. He was more well-read than I was. He was reading novels in the locker room after practice. And, the eye tracking technology he uses is what allows him, he voice banked, thousands of phrases before he lost his voice. So he was able to communicate using the voice banking technology that he activates with his tablet. And that, as you will see in reading the book, if you haven't read it already, is a tremendous source of frustration sometimes for Steve, because while it is miraculous, it is still very slow. I think 11 times slower than you or I communicate. It is what Steve communicates at right now with this technology. And as Steve likes to say, he can do more in 2 days than most people do in 15 minutes. That's kind of what this book was like. It took longer than normal just because we had extraordinary challenges in delivering it. And I think a common theme that comes up, and you've probably seen, I think Tommy's got a no white flag shirt on. You remember the no white flags mantra from Team Gleason. Steve's evolved through that, I think, through the journey he's on. So my next question is for Steve about the no white flags. You started this journey with almost a defiant attitude. It was almost like you were taunting ALS, this no white flags. And then we came up with the subtitle of the book. It's Finding Peace and Wisdom Within a Fragile Existence. So my question is, how has your mental approach evolved along this journey, especially as your existence has grown increasingly more fragile with time?
I think I've had a no white flags mindset my entire life, long before I was diagnosed with ALS. People told me I was too small to play linebacker at a major college. Then I landed a scholarship to Washington State University, started 3 years, and made all-conference as a senior. I was told I wasn't talented enough to play in the NFL. 2 teams cut me. Then, I played 8 seasons with the New Orleans Saints, became a team captain, and made one of the most iconic plays in league history. When others doubted me, I've always found a way to trust in life and dig deep, even in the depths of uncertainty. I suppose, in many ways, these were skills I learned by living in New Orleans. When I was diagnosed with ALS, I chose not to look at it as a death sentence. Instead, I saw it as the ultimate adventure, a new challenge, the greatest personal exploration. I'm no longer fighting for my life, or battling ALS. Rather, I'm journeying with ALS. I find strength and peace in acceptance and surrender. I'm learning to love this life we have. I have this diagnosis, and even if it has crushed my body, it's not going to crush my mind and spirit, or define my life. I told myself this could be an opportunity to inspire people, to my young family, an example of resilience.
All right, Chad, you're looped back in here. You said this was the most extraordinary project you worked on. Why?
Well, certainly the absolute most unique. First, I was brought into the Gleason family. I was warned, and it has made me such a better person. It has been just such a rewarding experience. But obviously, there are the obvious challenges to a project like this with how Steve has to write a book using eye tracking technology. One of the other challenges was the publisher wanted this book to be written kind of fast. And they kept saying, can we move up the pub date? Can we get this out sooner? And, asking a writer who uses eye tracking technology to write quickly, it's just like, what are you talking about? But Steve, he did it. And I think it's no secret here. I think maybe the greatest challenges were the ones that Steve imposed upon himself. He's a perfectionist. He wanted this book to be perfect. So to the very, very end, we were going, there are so many rounds of edits when a book comes out. There's, I would say, 5 altogether. The last ones are kind of smaller copy edits. But to the very end, Steve wanted to make this perfect, changing the ending, getting it right. And the editors basically at the end just kind of throwing his hands up like, okay. But he was absolutely right. This book is the best version it could have been. And everything improved with each round. This was extraordinary as well in that it was a team ensemble. I wasn't working with just one writer. I was working with a family and with a co-author and with the incredible Team Gleason and caretakers as well. But even with a team, at the end of the day, writing is a very solitary experience. At the end of the day, it's still Steve with those words. And in that way, the project was like everything else. And I guess the last thing was there was just an abundance of material. I think we had to really sort out, and Steve had to kind of sort out what the arc of this story was going to be, because he's written so much. That was one of the challenges, is just kind of finding where do we want to narrow in.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the blessings and the curse of the project was Steve and Michel were journalists. What I mean by that, they kept journals. So they had a ton of material. And it was really challenging to go through all of these journals, transcripts. If you saw the documentary, Steve recorded these video journals for his son Rivers before he lost his ability to speak. He wanted to have father-son conversations with Rivers on video format. So we had the transcripts of all those video blogs that he recorded over probably a year's time, going through the journals that they'd each individually kept, trying to sort through what exactly we needed, what we had to discard, was a big challenge, but it also is what makes this book so powerful, I think, because we have all that material. We didn't have to reinvent it through, interviews when, like Michel said, sometimes your memory can betray you. And I tell you, the thing that's in the book that I think resonates with me the most, and I think it goes back to something Drew Brees said about Steve. Drew said, Steve is indefatigable. And if you know what that means, Steve is a force of nature. He has a will like I've never seen in my life. I was friends with Steve. I knew Steve and Michel throughout his playing career and after his career, but it's different when you're on a project day after day and you see the challenges Steve goes through on a daily basis just to get out of bed and live his life as a husband and a father. And it was so inspiring to me to be a part of that. And it reminded me a lot when I was in 5th grade of my poetry lessons that I took. You might remember the poem Robert Frost, "The Road Not Taken," and about taking the road, the road diverged into yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled. That's what Steve has done throughout his life, and he has a little bit of a different way of saying it. He calls it crossing the rope, going to the other side, taking the road less traveled. And so I want to bring Michel into this because it's a source. When you read the book, you'll see throughout their journey together, Steve is a envelope pusher, right? He's always pushing the envelope. And Michel, not quite as much. And it's part of some of the frustration, but also some of the more humorous parts of the book are those battles that they have. So my question to you, did you ever come to his side? Have you learned to be more adventuresome by being married to this man?
I traveled for 6 months and living in tents and bathing in gas stations with Steve. I would have not done that 100% without him in my life. I think he's talking about the story when we're on we went on a 6-month adventure right after we got married around the world. And this is kind of pinpoint Steve exactly, but we're somewhere taking photos in Australia or New Zealand. I don't know, it must be New Zealand. And there's like a big area that says do not cross. And for the picture, Steve, he crosses the rope and he's on the spot that says do not cross. And I'm just like, at this point, I mean, it was 5 months in and I'm just like ready to go home and take a hot shower. But I'm just like, Steve, why do you always have to cross the rope? And Steve said, because it's the only way I can live. And so that's
and that's where life gets exciting, right?
Yep.
And that's Steve Gleason. I mean, it's probably what made him punch Blair Rasmussen in the nuts after he got waylaid during a game against the Carolina Panthers and got a 15-yard penalty. It's that same attitude. I don't know if we have time for any Q&A. I know Steve's going to say something to wrap up. But if you have any questions real quick for us at the panel, we can answer them very, very briefly, and then we'll be out for a signing out in the tent if you want to come out and get a photo op with Steve, get a signed book with Steve and Michel. So we would open it up to the floor if anybody has any questions. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure, gosh, I can't even remember. I'm sure things were. Yes, absolutely. So I think, I don't think we were ever challenged to use something. You know, if we were ever challenged, we would have long discussions of how and what we were going to put out there. We put out a lot, probably more than, in hindsight that I want to, but we did, again, we wanted to show this as real as possible to not tiptoe around things, because this is, we've got very real, difficult parts of our life, and we didn't want to, yes, we wanted to present that as well as not being on like TMZ, so we tried to find a delicate balance of everything. But yes, I mean, I don't think I really had to fight we had to fight for some things, but we had as long of discussions as we can have about how we present it and what we would include and not.
Anyone else? I know Steve very much wanted this, and Michel as well, so would say over, it's not a Disney movie, it's not a Hallmark greeting card, it's real. And I think that's the power behind the book. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Could you answer to that, maybe? Yeah,
it's tough, so he won't be able to answer. It's going to take too long, but I think it's just something that he loves, and he's given, he basically, everyone around him now, like, I think anytime any of us see any part of the moon, I mean, I probably have like 20 people now, when the moon is out, will text and be like, does Steve see the moon? So I think it's just something, I mean, who doesn't love the moon? But he has brought it. I mean, he is always making us, begrudgingly to the kids, sometimes go outside and take pictures with the moon. But he loves it and makes us all love it, whether we love it or not. But I think it's great because, Gray will be like, look at the moon, and she sticks, and I think it's awesome.
And I'm now realizing we should have had the moon on the paperback.
Yes.
We went with the tree
Too
instead.
late?
Yeah, probably too late. That's right.
Any other questions? I think we have time for maybe one or two more.
What jazz fest show would you want to see all over again?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. He might, I don't think we have enough time for him to answer that. But
Steve, you want to pick one? Can you type up one band you want to see?
I always ask Steve for recommendations for what shows to see because I know he's going to be out there every day, and it's every day, right?
I mean, he was in the hospital for, I think, 2 of the days 1 year, but
No excuse.
yes, very, very few. Yeah.
And Steve, during the book project, Steve and Michel met during the Jazz Fest triathlon, which is not a triathlon at all. It's actually just a reason for drunken revelry among some of Michel's friends. And I had heard all about this Jazz Fest triathlon, and a couple of years ago, Steve challenged me to do it. And of course, I was no way I was going to back down from that, but I've gotten way too old and I was way too drunk to do it. But I did it. And I think I blew my knee out sliding down into the bayou, trying to swim across. I couldn't even swim. I had to dog paddle my way across the bayou. And yeah, I paid that price for about 6 months, all because of the power of his challenging me to do it. And that's how they met. These two crazy characters met.
Pearl Jam.
My grandson will love that.
Goes without saying, right?
Yeah.
Steve, you have anything else you would like to say before we wrap up? And then again, we'll be out at the signing tent. Get your copy of the book. I think, how long do you think it'll be, Chad, before paperback comes out?
I think the paperback's coming out this spring or early summer. I'd have to check the date, but yeah.
So hardcover, still great holiday gift. We encourage you all to get the book for the holidays as a gift, and hopefully you get a chance to visit with Steve and Michel afterward out at the signing tent.
You were a great help with everything, Chad. We love you. Thanks so much for being here. I love y'all.
Thank you all very much.